All right. Right now, though, I want to talk New Orleans Saints. Because here we are. We are halfway through this NFL season, and I don't think people really realize this, that the New Orleans Saints are the number 1 seed in the NFC. I didn't even realize it until Danny and Musso pointed out to me earlier this week. I assumed because you had lost to the Packers head-to-head that they had that tiebreaker. But given that one of the Saints losses to the Raiders, so the Saints have a better NFC record, that is actually the premier tiebreaker. So it's kind of crazy to think about, right? You just look back at how this season has gone. You lose Mike Thomas in week 1. You fall to an unconvincing 1-2. Remember, we thought Drew Brees was washed. We thought his arm strength was terrible. His accuracy was such a red flag, all of these things. Like, we were all wondering, remember, I was talking back when I covered the team in 2013, and that was supposed to be a Super Bowl team that completely imploded. And I was wondering, did it happen again? Did I just drastically overrate this team? And then they have done now what all great teams do, which is they figured it out, okay? And so much of the figuring out falls at the feet of Sean Payton. It was interesting. When we talked to Booger earlier, he was very confident on the Bucs, right? Going so far as to say that even though they've lost 2 games in completely different ways, that he still felt that the Tampa Bay Bucs were a better team. Now, I think that's an absurd take. But that's fine. That's not what I want to highlight. What I want to highlight is, so Booger, he believes that in his head, but what was the one moment of weakness he kind of showed when it came to evaluating this game? He had to clearly acknowledge that Sean Payton is a far better coach than Bruce Arians. Going so far as to say that could potentially tip the scales in the Saints' favor, even though he thinks the Bucs are better. And make no mistake, Sean Payton is a top 5, maybe top 3 coach in the entire NFL. Just look at the consistency of his tenure, both from a win-loss perspective and from an offensive perspective. And just go look at what he did to that good Tampa Bay defense last week, completely running circles around them. And take some time to appreciate Sean Payton as we sit here halfway through the season celebrating 1 seed, right? Like, I will miss Drew Brees, but as long as Sean Payton remains for however long that is, there will be hope that remains. So now, the Saints have won 5 games in a row, culminates in a sweep of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their most impressive game yet and one of the most singular impressive games of the Peyton Brees era. And now you're the 1 seed. So let's look at this second half of the schedule and see how it works out for the New Orleans Saints. We're going to start, look, like everything else when it comes to schedule, I love breaking it down into quarters, right? First quarter, second quarter, third, fourth. Well, let's look at the third quarter of this schedule. And it's actually pretty damn favorable, more favorable than it felt at the beginning of the year. You got Niners, Falcons, Broncos, Falcons, okay? Let's start Niners. They're not at all what you expected at the beginning of the season. This should be a win, right? Like, I don't see where the Niners get the offensive production to keep up with the Saints or to win this game. I also don't see how the Niners stop the New Orleans Saints defensively, given the form that Brees and the Saints offense is currently in with Mike Thomas and Alvin Kamara. And, I mean, even the guy who killed you from San Francisco last year, Emmanuel Sanders, is now on your side. So, like, I think this is a huge uphill battle for the Niners, and it's all injury-related, make no mistake. The Niners have over $100 million on injury reserve. I mean, George Kittle's the one that broke your back last year along with Sanders. He's out. No Garoppolo. So you get a break here. I think you beat the Niners, right? Now, what do you make of the Atlanta Falcons? Because this is where it gets a bit more interesting. Would y'all agree with this? The Atlanta Falcons are the best of the bad teams. Of teams with a losing record, that they are the best team with a losing record.
Left on the Saints' schedule or just
in the NFL?
In general in the NFL?
I can lay out an argument that it is in the entirety of the NFL.
I think the Vikings are pretty good.
The Vikings are good too. That's a good point, Dan.
For the same issue I have with the Vikings, I have with the Falcons. I worry about defense, but for both of those teams.
Absolutely, and they're not good. I'm not saying that they're good teams, but they are the best of the bad.
Matt Ryan is better than Kirk Cousins.
Definitely. Then again, Dalvin Cook is way better than anything Atlanta has at running back.
Dalvin Cook is carrying the Minnesota Vikings right now.
So here's why, though, I think that they are, or at least they have a very solid argument to make as being the best bad team.
The Chargers have a good argument with that as well.
Do you realize that's fair? Do you realize the Falcons right now, though, are losing games by an average of 0.9 points? So, like, their average point differential is minus 0.9. That is actually first in the league of anybody who's not positive, right, of all the losing record teams. On the year, they have a point differential. So this is points that they've scored versus points they've allowed. They're only -8. The Cleveland Browns are 5-3 at -31. So, like, the Falcons have played close games. And then think about this. They have lost an NFL record 3 games in which they had a 98% win chance, right? 98%. That's 3 2% beats. That's unbelievable. And ultimately, that's why they're bad. That's why they don't deserve the playoffs, right? And we're talking about the Bears and Lions and the Cowboys games. But what that also means is there are other realities out there where actually we might be in the only reality where this is not the case. In all the other realities, the Falcons are 6-3 right now. And they're like in the midst of this, it's a crazy NFC South. And so I guess that's the only thing that worries me a bit right now is that they haven't been terrible on the year. Offensively, they're very good, or at least Matt Ryan can be very good. Defensively, they're not good, but like it feels like they have enough to get 1 or 2 off the Saints. Rivalry games are already weird enough to begin with. This is a team that is better than its record would say, and Raheem Morris has them playing better. Now, I don't know how I feel about the interim Saints thing, but I think, I don't know. Okay, where's y'all's head at? Do you think it's more likely that they split these games or they sweep Atlanta?
I think it is more likely that they split, but I think they have a good chance to sweep.
Danny?
I agree, yeah. I think it's more likely they split, but I think they're definitely capable of sweeping them for sure.
Okay, so then in this next quarter right now, we've got a win for the Niners, and we got 1-1 on the Falcons. So we're looking at 2-1. They'll beat the Broncos. That's the next game. That's the game I spoke about. It's in Denver, November 29th, which could get a bit weird, but you did see what Breeze and them did going up to Chicago. Like the Broncos aren't horrible, but they too have a lot of injuries, and they're just not really threatening in any way either. So let's say you're 3-1 through this next quarter. So now we're 9-3. Okay, still looking great pace for that 4 seed. What are your final 4 games in? Eagles should be a win.
That should be
no
a
doubt.
win.
They're bad. And not even much to expound.
Up in Philly in December,
But the Saints have been fine there.
Yeah.
Saints have been fine in Philly. I guess I'm just really thinking about that playoff game. But whatever.
The Eagles are not good.
Yes.
And if you lose to a team in the NFC East, that's just not okay.
Now, the Chiefs in the Superdome, which again, I'm so bummed that we can't watch live, but whatever, there's no point in lamenting that. We could say that's a loss because
Wait, you can't watch live? What do you mean?
No, I want to be in the stands.
Oh, they're supposed to increase the.
I know. I'm just lamenting that this is a year where we had Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, all these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Tom Brady come to the Superdome and you couldn't play in front of 72,000. So we'll say the Chiefs is a loss, right?
Maybe.
Let's just, if we're talking more likely, Danny, we're talking more likely, yes.
Talking conservatively, yes, it is a loss.
Next, we got the Vikings. I'll say they should win that game.
Short week. That's on Christmas Day. That's on a Friday coming off the Chiefs game. It's a short week. So that makes that interesting. That makes that game a little more interesting.
I feel like Danny has Vikings PTSD.
Yeah.
Danny, how are you feeling about this game?
For whatever reason, they always, the Vikings is always a mismatch for the Saints. The Vikings and the Rams for whatever reason.
I just don't see. For whatever reason in the past, like last year, what they do, they kick the Saints' ass on the defensive line. The Vikings' D-line cannot do that this year.
Not this year.
They just don't have the players. So I don't think the Vikings have a chance either, so we'll get that as a win. And then you close out with the Panthers. Scrappy team, fun team. If the Saints have stuff to play for, though, I think they win that game.
And it's on a long week coming off the Christmas Day game.
Per the math we just did, that has the Saints at 12-4. So if I think that now, and so really it's going to come down to these 2 things, right? The 2 Falcons games and the Chiefs game. You got to get 2 of those 3. And if you do that, you will set yourself up to be 13-3. You'll have a great NFC record because one of your losses will have come against the AFC, and you will most likely be the 1 seed heading into the playoffs, which I hope gets you a first-round bye. Obviously, we talked earlier in the show about the NFL voting on some things that could potentially change it by adding an 8th team to the playoffs. But when you look, despite the 1-2 start, despite all the bad, the Saints are actually perfectly positioned in this final half of the season for a 3rd year in a row. Think about that. That is wild. For a 3rd year in a row to go 13-3 and potentially be that 1 seed once again. So shout out to the New Orleans Saints doing exactly what they had to up to this point. Let's see how strong this team can finish. I still think 12-4 is probably most likely. But they are knocking on the door of 13-3. Danny, you're shaking your head.
I still think they win out, but
Win out. Wow. You think they go 14-2?
I think they win out.
Dude, the 14-2 is rare.
That is wow. Okay.
I will say though, to Danny's point, I mean, look, they're healthy again. They got their full arsenal. You saw what that full arsenal can do, not just offensively, but even defensively. Right? Marcus Davenport has made a massive difference to the Saints team, and pass rush is one of the key elements to winning big games as the season goes on, and then obviously winning in the playoffs. So.
And they get Sheldon Rankins back, and Quan's coming.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And the offense is rolling right now
Danny,
with
you're
Michael
kinda
Thomas back in
selling
the
me.
fold.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it looks like injury would be the only thing that could potentially upset this. So we'll have to see. But great job by the Saints. Shout out who dat doing exactly what they need to over this first half of the NFL season. All right, when we get back, we're going to keep talking NFL, man. Let's look at this weekend schedule, the biggest games, how it affects New Orleans, which games you should be locked in on here on OTB.
OTB, OT.